We're really excited. This is Eric Harris with the Game Plan with Disability Rights California. We just did an amazing interview with my friend and colleague, fellow advocate, Councilmember Mai Vang, who is a city council member here in Sacramento, who has done amazing advocacy, and she'll talk about some of the work that she's done in Sacramento, in particular on behalf of homeless folks, folks with mental health disabilities, immigrants, just an amazing list of advocacy that she's done as a city council member. And she's now engaging in her next journey, which is running for the U.S. House of Representatives to represent the city of Sacramento in Washington, D.C. She is really excited about it and has really hit the ground running. She talks about her journey as the daughter of immigrants, first generation American, and she's really done wonderful work. And connects to disability in a very special way, and talks about that, but talks about how all of our issues intersect with one another. So I hope you all enjoy it, and please look forward to this wonderful episode of the Game Plan with Disability Rights California.
The Game Plan is a production of Disability Rights California, a space to strategize, organize, and posterize for the future of the disability rights movement. For more information on our work, please visit us at disabilityrightsca.org.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Game Plan with Disability Rights California. My name is Eric Harris, and I am your host for the show, and we are thrilled to have a friend, colleague, fellow advocate, Sacramentan Mai Vang, council member who's also running for Congress. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Hi, everyone. Eric, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Absolutely.
And happy 2026 to everyone.
Yes, happy New Year.
Yes.
I know it's we're gonna go through like the editing process, and it'll probably be out sometime later. But yes, happy New Year. This is our first recording in 2026.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm honored to be here today. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to have you. We've had a number of advocates. I know we were talking earlier, different leaders in different communities. This is a really great opportunity to have somebody who is running for office and somebody who is an active leader, not only in Sacramento, throughout the state and throughout the country, really seen as a real dynamic leader, a real special person in terms of moving all of our agendas forward, all of our collective agendas forward. So we're really thrilled to talk to you and just get to know you a little bit.
Thanks, Eric. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you and everyone from the Disability Rights California, everyone that's part of the team, for the great work that y'all do, right? As elected leaders, our job is really to be a good steward and to really champion and uplift y'all on the front lines doing this incredible hard work. And so I just want to say thank you to you and thank you to the entire organization and all the advocates and organizers on the ground. I mean, our job is to follow the lead of community, and that is how I've always governed. And so I really want to give kudos to you and the entire team for the great work that y'all do here in the state and just nationally. So
thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we're going to get started with some background, just like throwbacks for you, your upbringing, your background, growing up, your large family.
I know.
I think it's just whenever people kind of understand, like, no, this is, one of 16, like, huge family. So if you could just talk a little bit about your background and your family.
Yeah. So I was born and raised right here in Sacramento. I am the proud daughter of Hmong refugees. I am the oldest of 16 children. So you can imagine at a young age, I really learned the importance of stepping up to take care of family and community. Sometimes I would share with my friends that I can change diapers with my eyes closed because I've changed lots of diapers. But it was definitely humble beginnings, just loving on and taking care of my brothers and sisters. And so so yeah, I grew up in Oak Park and also in Meadowview. My father's side of the family lived in Oak Park, and my mom's side of the family lived in Meadowview. And so I grew up both in Oak Park and in Meadowview. I went to Miwok Elementary, formerly Sutter Middle School, and Phoebe Hearst as well for elementary. And then I went to Sac High, class of 2003. So I'm a Sac High dragon of the original Sac High before it became a charter school.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I grew up right here in Sacramento, in South Sac, and I love this community. I love this town. And then I was the first in my family to go to college. I went to the University of San Francisco, and then I went to grad school at UCLA, and then I returned home to help take care of my brothers and sisters and help mom and dad. But yeah, it was definitely humble beginnings. Mom and dad used to have a large pot in the backyard, and we would make, like, when I make food, when I make dinner, even if it's just me and my husband, like, I cook for like 10 to 15 people. So you have enough food for the week, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, that was kind of just me growing up in Sacramento.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And those who might not know, those who might not be from Sacramento, the Hmong population is very large in Sacramento, very profound. Can you just talk a little bit about the Hmong community here in Sacramento?
Absolutely. Here in Sacramento County, we have about 40,000 Hmong residents. And just for those that don't know a little bit about the Hmong people, my parents actually came here as refugees. And a big part of that was because during the Vietnam War, the United States actually recruited, the CIA actually recruited the Hmong to fight in the secret war of Laos. And so while the Vietnam War was happening, they recruited the Hmong community, young Hmong soldiers up to 10 years old, to fight in the secret war of Laos. And if you all know your history, we withdrew our troops. We, meaning the United States, withdrew our troops, and that led to a complete genocide of our people. Anyone that allied with the United States. And so my mom and my dad and many thousands of Hmong families, fled. They left Laos, crossed the Mekong River, and made it to Thailand to seek refuge. And my parents lived in the refugee camps for several months. Many lived there for several years until they were able to come to the United States. And something that I share with folks, yes, I'm Hmong, but our struggles are so interconnected because back in the 70s and after fall of Saigon, and you started seeing a wave of refugees coming to the United States, about 67% of Americans actually didn't want refugees here. And it was actually the African American and Black community that fought to make sure that refugees had the opportunities to come here to the United States. And so that's why we're here. We're here today. And my parents came over as refugees. I was born and raised in Sacramento, but that's a history of the Hmong people, that we fought for democracy and we fought for this country before we even stepped foot on this country, right? And so that's a little bit about our people.
That's fantastic. And I think, doing disability rights work, one of the things that we have to be very thoughtful about is all the intersections.
Yeah.
So the intersections of race, the intersections of gender, identity, and all of the identities that we all live with on a regular basis. And can you just talk a little bit about your experience with disability, whether it's family members, friends, colleagues, and kind of how that has impacted your
experience? Thanks, Eric. And I would say, when we talk about disability, disability intersects all of our communities, right? And seeing disability through that lens really highlights the issue as cross-sectional. And for me in particular, this does hit close to home because I have family and loved ones with disability, seen and unseen. Right. And in particular, I think about my nephew, Yusuf, who is 9 years old, who is autistic. And my sister and my brother-in-law having to navigate to make sure that they can advocate for Yusuf to have the resources he needs to reach his full potential. But I also think about many Hmong parents that maybe do not speak English, that doesn't know how to navigate the system, that can't advocate for their loved ones, right? And so this issue is really personal. And I would also say there's also this stigma around talking about disability in the API community, in the Southeast Asian, and in the Hmong community in particular. And I know that Haifu, Hmong Youth and Parents United, I've done work with them, really holding space for our families to demystify when we talk about disability and mental health, and to make sure that Hmong families have the resources they need in order to make sure that all of our babies are able to thrive. And so this is incredibly personal to me and to you and to so many of us, right? It can't be seen as something that's siloed. Again, like I said, disability intersects with all of our communities. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think more and more, especially during more modern times, you have, in some ways, generational gaps where older generations might be a little bit more hesitant to talk about disability. Younger generations might be more open about talking about mental health or talking about wellness or talking about their experiences and how much stress and pressure and additional obstacles they might be experiencing. And so I just think it's really powerful to have a current elected official and somebody who's running for office speak power to this, because it's such a real issue for so many of us.
Yeah, and I would also add that oftentimes we also in the Hmong culture don't have the language to articulate some of the disability, right? And so that's why it's so important to make sure that we have practitioner and professionals and advocates from our diverse community who can speak to those issues, which is why I think diversifying race, gender, ability of folks in the workforce is so important to make sure that they can speak to those issues.
That's right. So Sacramento, being in the halls of government in Sacramento is such a powerful place to be, whether it's city council, whether it's state capitol, whether it's board of supervisors. It is the mover and shaker of the rest of the state, and how California goes, often the rest of the country can go. One of the issues that you've been very involved in, and Disability Rights California has been very involved in, is homelessness, mental health, and how we serve our unhoused neighbors, how we best provide them with resources, housing, mental health care, and the rest. What has been, I guess, some of the positives, some of the more frustrating experiences, but just in general, what have been the experiences that you've had engaging on these issues here in Sacramento?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I really appreciate that question. I think what I will share with you is that, and all my colleagues will probably echo this as well, is that the number one issue that when you say what is the number one issue in Sacramento, you often hear from the people and their constituents is that it's homelessness and it's housing, right? And I will share with you that it is an issue that all of us, the mayor and council, care deeply about, but all 9 of us may have a different strategy on actually how to solve it. For me in particular, I know I could speak for me as the councilwoman of District 8, is that I have been a strong advocate of prevention. And I think we have to do more in terms of investing upstream to keep families in their homes, to make sure that they're housed, because that's so key. I don't know if you had a chance to watch the first ever city and county joint meeting. I'm glad that we finally met as a region. And if you looked at the dollars in which we are spending our funding, it was like 1% was spent on prevention, right? And if we continue to just put a Band-Aid and not address the root causes of housing and keeping folks inside their homes, then we're going to continue to still have this crisis, right? There's a study that came out at UCSF that said for every 1 person we house, 3 more enters the system. And so I've always been a big proponent of making sure that we have tenant rights protection, that we keep our families housed. During the COVID pandemic, it was so important for me to use those dollars as emergency rental assistance. That is so key. And so prevention has always been of utmost importance for me. And I also know that you have to be able to address across the continuum. It's prevention, which I believe we are not doing enough of. And then it's also stabilizing what's happening on the street, providing resources, care, shelter, wraparound services, right? And we can't do that through enforcement. I've always been very straightforward about that position, is that we cannot arrest our way out of homelessness.
That's right.
And I am proud to stand alongside you and so many advocates that have advocated for policy that really centers human care, right? And so it's going to take all of us. Yeah. And something I will share with you, because you said, as mayor and council, we are the capital of California and that we set the direction. What I will share with you is, yes, absolutely, as a councilwoman, I have the power of 1 vote. But what I will also share with you is that being on the other side, I've been on the other side of being a community organizer. And I will share with you is that there is so much power within the people to actually organize and mobilize and come out and speak and actually push elected officials on the issues, because they are elected by you, the people, and their job is to serve the community. And so we do have power. We, meaning the people, do have power to vote in and to vote out elected officials who aren't serving the needs of our community. And so, yes, elected officials, we absolutely do have a power in that vote, but that vote is determined by who is sitting in those seats. And so at the end of the day, we, the people, do have power at the end of the day. And I just wanted to share that with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. And I think just hearing that answer, I think I know the answer to this next question. But, what gives you, because a lot of times you're on the other side of the mayor. You're on the other side of these so-called powers that be, the status quo. And sometimes you're on your own in that way. Maybe you have a colleague or two who might join with you. But a lot of times you are the warrior, the lone warrior up there speaking truth to power on some of these issues. What kind of gives you the strength and confidence to do that, and knowing that you have, your community behind you, you have others behind you, but what gives you that strength?
I would say because I'm on the ground with community, I hear from them directly. And so when I know that I am on the 7-2 or the 8-1 vote, it's not just me, it's hundreds and thousands of residents who would, if they were sitting in that seat, they would vote the same way. Right. And so for me, it's making sure that you really do have a pulse of those that are closest to the pain. And those are the folks that I'm on the ground with every single day. And so in any decision that I make on the dais, I've always centered community. Like before I make a vote, I always consult with community advocates and folks on the ground on their position on the policy. That's really important to me. And then elevating that when I'm on the dais. Yeah. That is our job, right? In hopes that it would sway some of my colleagues to vote the other way, right? And I do my very best to share our story, our collective story of why this policy is good for Sacramento or why it is bad for Sacramento, and hoping that my colleagues would vote in alignment. But what I will also share with you is that, yes, it's important to also speak truth to power in those moments. And folks may say, council member, you're often on the 7-2 or 8-1 vote. That in those moments, yes, I am in the 7-2 or 8-1 votes, but as a progressive councilwoman, I have been able to still get work done and delivered for our communities, right? So for example, I think about, let me share this with you. I've been on the city council for about 4 years now. I served one term, and I've worked on 3 citywide ballot measures. All 3 has passed. I don't know any other council members that have worked on 3 city ballot measures in 4 years and got it passed, right? And so, yes, while I'm on the 7-2 or 8-1, I work closely with community members on the ground and sometimes even colleagues that I may not agree with to find common ground to get things done. Because at the end of the day, I really want to see progress in Sacramento. Right. But I will continue to speak truth to power, even if we're not in alignment with our vote.
That's right. Cool.
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing. Yeah. And I want to shift just a little bit to what you're currently doing as well. Congress is obviously a major deal. And many might say, and maybe they've told you and maybe you've thought about it and decided, thanks, but no thanks, is why wouldn't you run for mayor first? Or why wouldn't you run for county board of supervisor or state legislature? Why are you going to go all the way up to Congress from city council? That seems like a major jump. And what would you say to someone who might have that thought or idea?
Well, first I'm going to pause and I'm going to tell them that if we were having this conversation a year ago, I wouldn't even believe that I would be running for Congress. And it was not in the plan to actually run for Congress at all. I was planning to do this second term of city council, continue to hold the line against this authoritarian administration. And then it was accumulation of organizing on the ground, being in spaces with my loved ones who are refugees and immigrants, and recognizing that we don't have leadership in the halls of Congress. And that this moment requires a leader who understands the day-to-day struggles of our working families. And I have deep gratitude and respect for Doris Matsui and the family that have served this region for almost half a century. But this moment what's happening in our country is not normal. And this moment requires a leader who can speak truth to power and who can fight in the halls of Congress. And I believe that I'm that leader for this moment. It is kind of the unspoken thing that you don't do what Mai Vang does, especially among elected officials. But I don't have the luxury of waiting. I don't have the luxury of sitting on standing on the sidelines. Our families and our communities do not have that luxury to wait. Right? We need a fighter in this moment. And I've been a fighter my entire life, and I plan to take that same fight to the halls of Congress. And so that's why I've decided to step in the ring.
I love it. Fantastic. And, to your point about the current situation, you've talked about your background, of the community's background, of immigrants being just so proud of being Americans and being in the United States, and all the fights over generations that have occurred. And we see what's happening now with the current administration, with the approaches from ICE, and just the verbal attacks, physical attacks, and just dangerous circumstances that immigrants find themselves in now during this administration. What comes to mind as you plan on taking the fight to Washington, D.C.? How can you best represent the voices of the community there?
So I really do want to take this moment just to hold space for those that have been murdered, those that have been harmed, and those that have been separated by ICE, right? Separated from their families. This fight is incredibly personal to me. I think one of the critical moments that made me decided to run was sitting down with my uncle and him crying and telling me that he was afraid to go to his next court hearing at the Moss Federal Building, and had asked me a question like, what are our federal leaders doing? What are our Congress members doing to protect us? And I didn't have an answer for him. And I said to him, I will do everything I can as a city council member to hold the line and to fight for you. And when the time comes, I'm going to go with you, right? I think there are a lot of things that we could be doing at the congressional level to really change the immigration system. I think one is streamlining the process for citizenship. I have family and loved ones who are dreamers in DACA, who wake up every morning afraid if they're going to be separated from their loved ones. And depending on the administration, their status is often temporary. And it is long overdue to reform our immigration system. The other piece is we also need to dismantle and abolish ICE. That ICE was created in 2003, and we don't really need ICE in particular. And if you can pay $50,000 bonuses to hire ICE agent, you absolutely can fund healthcare and housing and making sure that our teachers are paid well, right? It is really about prioritizing our budget and ensuring that we're investing in systems of care and not in the military. Right. We are living in a moment where we have state sanctioned violence that's happening. And so as the next Congresswoman, I am going to be incredibly vocal about these issues and doing everything I can to make sure that we redirect our dollars into systems of care, making sure that education and housing and healthcare is fully funded.
Fantastic. Well, I know that there are so many who completely agree with you. So many in Sacramento, so many throughout the country who feel strongly that what you just said is exactly where they are on these issues. And I know that there are a lot of disabled people throughout the country who feel like we've gone unnoticed by elected officials, Congress, this current administration, the state legislature, others all throughout the state of California as well. And we're always looking for champions. We're like, anybody who is willing and interested to hear our stories, to talk to us, to engage with us. We want to, kind of build on those relationships. Yeah. So can you just...
And Eric, I just want to say, we just talked about immigration, but it's not a silo topic. When we talk about immigration is disability rights. Yeah. Disability rights is immigration, like immigrant rights, right? Yeah. Those things are intrinsically tied. Because we have immigrants who have disabilities. So you can't separate those things, right? And so when we talk about what's happening families being separated by ICE, is that we have refugees and immigrants with disabilities that are being harmed in this very moment, right? And so you can't separate those things. I think about the workforce, job training, right? We need specialized job training for folks with disability. That is a workforce issue, right? When we're talking about healthcare in particular, HR 1, the big ugly bill that was just passed last year, cuts millions from Medicaid and Social Security, which are critical programs that our folks and our families and our loved ones with disabilities need. And so these things are so intrinsically tied. I will say, though, when we talk about these issues as elected officials, we got to be better at uplifting and centering our folks with disabilities. So when we talk about healthcare, when we talk about immigration, we have to be able to say, hey, as we're talking about this issue, we're talking about folks with disabilities, right? They are at the core of why we're in this fight. And so for me, I think about that because we all have loved ones in our families that have disabilities, seen and unseen, and they are the reasons why we do what we do.
That's right. And I think that's been a big part of our experience in engaging with elected officials is when they start making the connection, when they start saying, I don't know anything about disability. I'm in charge of transportation. It's like transportation is a disability issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, I'm not in charge of, I don't know anything about disability. I'm in charge of, any number of issues, education, any number of issues that we know. So to have you speak so strongly about that is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And I will also share with you, as a current city council member right now, I am the chair of the Racial Equity Committee. And one thing that I have asked for in the last presentation was to have our DAC committee, our Disability Advisory Committee, come and actually present their recommendation. One of these recommendations that they have requested of mayor and council that I am a big proponent of is making sure we actually have a citywide ADA coordinator. So I'm really proud to be fighting alongside the DAC commission to fight to make this happen. We fought to have the first ever citywide language access coordinator. And a big part of that was because we did an audit and realized they had 16 recommendations and that we're just quote unquote in compliance. I think it's not even about language, but disability is the same thing. I think oftentimes government and elected, they're like, well, we're doing everything that we're supposed to. We're in compliant, right? And it's not about just being in compliant. It's about accessibility. It's about not just doing like the floor, right? But we need to be able to ensure that our folks with disability have access to all of the opportunities so that they can thrive. And I don't think that we have done that as a government entity. And so we have to continue to push to make sure that that folks with disability are seen and that they are intrinsically tied to all of our policy that we do throughout the city, no matter what level of government.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We work closely with the DAC
here
in Sacramento, and one thing that I'm sure they'll talk to you about and or have already talked to you about is when things are made accessible, they're better for everyone.
Everyone, yeah.
So
yeah.
No, that's
and that should, but that shouldn't be the reason why you do it too, right? But it is true when you all boats rise when you're able to absolutely,
yeah, no, definitely. So no, we're really just thrilled about your campaign. Look forward to continuing to work with you as you go through this journey and really uplift your story, uplift the work that you've done, because I think that's a really important piece to this, and we want to make sure that we can be as clear with all the folks who are going to be tuning into this that you've done the work, that this isn't like you're just jumping all the way up to Congress because you feel an urge to do it. It's you've done the work in Sacramento, you're continuing to do the work in Sacramento, and now you want to take it to the next level, continuing to do it in Sacramento, but be a champion for those throughout the country.
And I was gonna say, I'm not going alone. I'm taking all of you with me.
That's right.
I am not going there alone. And even this campaign, I would say, go to myforus.com to learn more. But this campaign is not about Mai Vang. It is about all of us. It's gonna take all of us to actually win this campaign because we are taking on an entrenched Democrat, someone who's been in office for over 47 years, a dynasty, and there are those that are betting for us to lose, us meaning the people. And so, if you are angry and fired up and want to fight back against this authoritarian administration, the midterm elections are here. And it's so important that we actually, mobilize, organize, speak up, but also with our votes, and that we actually send elected leaders who are not going to go back to DC just to fold to the same systems that actually got us here in the first place. We need fighters who are actually going to get there and actually want to transform a system to make sure that it's working for folks like you and me. And so, yeah, tap in, go to myforus.com to learn more. We have less than 145 days left until June 2nd. Wow. And we're going to need all of you. We're going to need every single one of you. And then I don't take any corporate PAC money. That's the other piece, right? This is completely grassroots. And I do often think that a lot of elected officials, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republicans, they're bought out by corporate PACs and billionaires. And our campaign is strictly grassroots.
Fantastic. Well, we have 2 final questions. One, just, is there a piece of culture, book, show, movie that you're just like, folks, if you have any time to check something out, like, this is what you should check out right now?
Well, I would say, the last movie I actually saw, my husband took me to go watch a movie actually just last week. Oh, nice. And we actually went to go watch David and Goliath. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was in the movie theater at Delta Shores, and there was like all these little kiddos around me. And my husband is sitting next to me, and I'm like, we're really going to watch this? He's like, yes, just sit down. And I watched it, and I actually ended up crying watching the movie. And it was a cartoon, but it was so inspirational because in some ways it's a reflection of this campaign. It's like the David Goliath story of us taking on the entire establishment. And so I would say, go watch David and Goliath. Fantastic. We all know that story, but it's so different when you're watching it as a movie. I was bawling during the movie. I just thought it was so inspiring.
I love it. Fantastic. Yeah. And then the last question, your game plan for 2026. I mean, the show is called The Game Plan. I think we know what you'll be doing for the next several months, but anything in particular that you want to lift up?
Heart and hustle. That's my hashtag, heart and hustle. That means we're going to be knocking on doors, talking to every voter, talking to folks who are not voters, folks who are not the age of voting yet, and tapping into our young folks, everyone to be engaged in the movement. It's not just a campaign, but there is a movement happening in this country to transform and to fight back against this authoritarian administration. But we need heart and hustle. We have to have passion. We have to have that action. And so that's the game plan, is heart and hustle.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Mai.
Thank you so much, Eric, for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes, let's do this.
Sounds great.
This has been The Game Plan, a production of Disability Rights California. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the platform of your choice. See you next time.